Hey guys, welcome back to another rousing edition of Greenhouse Notes. We are in the kitchen still because I still don't have a greenhouse, but we'll sort that out at some point. I actually tried to buy one at some point this week when I was going to various secondhand and salvage stores, and there was one on the lot, and they wouldn't sell it to me because they'd already sold it to someone else, so whatever. We will move on. We will figure it out. In the meantime, the kitchen is still becoming the greenhouse in this space. It is the beginning of February, first day of February actually. And yeah, I just wanted to go over what's going on here. I figured, giving you guys a weekly or so update. So here's the situation. I'm basically in and out of this space every couple of weeks. And sometimes I'm gone a week. Sometimes I'm gone 2 weeks. There's various other people, in and out as well, but all of that is to say I am not in a position to get other people to take care of plants. And also, I kind of want to figure out as we go a really good way and methodology that you guys can replicate at home to keep plants alive for those periods of time that I'm out of town. So that's something I've been working on here the last month. I got back, I was gone for 10 days, a couple of weeks, I guess a week and a half ago now, or a week ago now, and I got back and most of the things I had planted were still alive, but I have planned all of this indoor gardening stuff to try and work that way. So again, walking you through some of the stuff I found in the last week or two that is working for me, that might work for you. So we're just going to get to it. I'm going to start with windowsill drip trays because this is one of the biggest obstacles I've run into trying to garden inside. So most windowsills are in the neighborhood of 4 inches, 3 to 4 inches wide, right? And that might accommodate one of these little 4-inch pots, but it doesn't typically accommodate any sort of trays that exist in the marketplace. If you go to a garden center or a big box store, you're not going to find something that will sit on the windowsill. If you do, you're very lucky because I literally spent weeks asking every garden center that I went to. I looked online a little, but didn't find anything that I was super happy with. And then I wandered into the dollar store the other day because I go there to check out their gardening supplies at this time of year. I don't remember if it's actually called the dollar store. It might have been one of the other brands. I'm not naming names, but there's a handful of dollar stores out there that get gardening supplies around January, February, March. You might want to go check it out. One of the things that I found that works really well for windowsill drip trays are these little organizer bins. Let's see if maybe you can get the focus on this. I don't know if they make longer ones. They definitely make shorter ones. So I got these, they're 13.5 inches by 3.79 inches by 2 inches, which is perfect because they can hold water. There's water in this one, so I don't want to tilt it too far. But it's rubberized on the inside because it basically is to hold, all of your junk in your junk drawer if you keep it organized, like I do not, because all of my organizer trays are drip trays for the windowsill. But so I liked it because I was looking at using baker's tins, either the glass ones or ceramic or metal. And the metal ones rust, so that was kind of out of the question. Glass ones, just finding the size, the footprint, most of them are 6 inches wide, so again, those are not going to sit nicely on the sills. I want them to be flush with the window so that it's not an issue of, bumping into them or somebody moving something and a bunch of stuff comes crashing down. We're trying to avoid that. So this is $1. I think that's a really good deal. It's a very sturdy rubberized tray. Again, it has rubberized feet on the bottom, so it's non-slip. It's not the most beautiful thing in the world, but if you're looking to save your sills and get your deposit back if you're a renter, that might be a good way to go about. As you can see, it fits 2 of my cut apart 6-packs and a 4-inch pot, or it will also fit I want to say 4 4-inch pots. So, you know, kind of do the math there, but I bought as many as they had, like 5 or 6, and then I might look for more, but I've kind of moved into like a more aesthetically pleasing direction for the kitchen, and those are sort of my backups that I'm putting, you know, in the bathroom, bedroom, wherever, if I have more seeds that are started, because getting the rotation going for spring, for stuff that's ready to plant out, has to happen now in the area and climate that I'm in, so that I have the right size seedlings, or the size that I'd like to put out. So anyway, that's the organizer tray. They also make these smaller ones. This is baby food. So I just did a pot of cover crops with a little bit of inoculant and some of the food that I was feeding everything else. And I think that these guys, I don't know if I'm going to plant them out and try and get, initially I was going to just like chop and drop them on top of some of these containers, but the more I think about it, the more I think I might plant them out into the raised bed that still needs more soil, just because I see nutrient cycling in that raised bed. I've seen fungi popping up, I've seen nettles popping up, so it makes sense to me to maybe start getting some cover crop in there, and so I might just drop these guys in, and then there's some more seeds as well, to, you know, like I said, get the nutrient cycling in there again, get the right sort of microbes coming up from the ground underneath, or just multiplying if they're already in there, since I'm seeing movement. But they have, at the dollar store, going back, they have these 4-inch trays as well, so you can do individual containers. Again, they're the same, just like little storage things. I found them in the kitchen area. Like, you're not going to find these trays in a garden center. Unfortunately, they don't put them on the right shelf, is what I think. Like, they should be putting them both in the organizers and in the kitchen organizers and in the garden area, but they don't, so I don't organize the store. But if you're looking for something that will fit on a windowsill, the kitchen organization section is probably your best bet. So I got, these were 2 for $1. I think they were 2 packs. Yeah, so they were 2 for $1. So not as cost effective, but if you're kind of short on space, you need to move stuff around, like, that's a good bet. I actually brought, so these 4-inch pots I brought just several stacks of them that I cleaned back from Texas to California, because 4-inch pots are expensive. But if you go to your garden center, especially at the end of the season, so like end of summer, beginning of fall, maybe end of fall even, they usually just have like dumpsters full. So you can go ask now, but they're probably going to be using them, or they already threw them away months ago. But keep that in mind. You know, if you're trying to ramp up to grow a lot more stuff and you're short on finances for supplies, then hitting up your local garden center, making some friends there, you know, being a very good customer, and then seeing them at the end of the season to see what plastics you can recycle instead of them going to wherever they're sending them now. It's just a good thing to keep in mind. Another thing that I've decided, so I talked about that I was going a more aesthetic route in the kitchen. So one of the things I've decided there for the plants that are living on the windowsills, because, so I'm going to back up a little. The cabin that I'm living in and working out of right now is maybe 300 square feet. So it's about as big as my old greenhouse in Texas. But it's twice the size of the trailer in California. So, you know, like there's that. But creating sort of a live workspace, for me, if I'm going to be spending a lot of time in a space and it's not an outdoor space, like a greenhouse or a workshop or something that can be a little bit messier, you know, like you are used to having dirt in those spaces, but in a kitchen, in an area where I prepare food and live, I want to be surrounded by things that both feel clean and are really beautiful. So another one of my dollar store finds for gardening this year is a combo kit that I kind of put together here, and it's a little bit heavier than these. But I like it because, so this is a 4-inch, well, let me get the one that's not wet. So this is a 4-inch glass, just like a votive holder. You'd find it on like the candle aisle at the dollar store. And I love it because it's glass, it's easy to clean, it's heavy. Yes, it will break if it hits the ground, but because they're on windowsills, because they can sit really flush, because it's basically the same width as the windowsill, I'm not super concerned about them falling, you know, barring an earthquake or natural disaster. Like, I have confidence that these guys are much more difficult to bump off a ledge. So what I'm doing is I take the 4-inch glass container, and then I got these I want to say the 3.5-inch terracotta pots, also at the dollar store. They were 2 for $1. These are $1 a piece, so this is not my most cost-effective solution, but it is my most beautiful solution, and I want pretty things in the kitchen, so that's the way this is going, because, you know, why not have beautiful things to look at all day long? Like, it makes sense to me. I also love this method, though. Like, first off, the plants I've transplanted so far are pretty happy, because terracotta breathes. Now, the thing that is the downside about that is that while these roots probably won't get too rotten or soggy if I were to leave water in the base when I'm away, which is part of my plan. This is a little Calabrian chili. These guys are just like going gangbusters right now. I'm so proud of them. They're all planted at the same time as a lot of the other peppers I have, and they're like 3 times as big. So good seeds, apparently. Saved seeds, but you know, like they're doing well. But one of the things I was saying is that I like that terracotta breathes, but I also like that it absorbs water. So this is going to stay evenly wet along this entire surface of the soil, so that you don't get the soil pulling away from the sides like you do in plastic. But it's also going to allow those roots to sort of go to the very edges of their confinement in this container, because there's some air exchange happening there. So I think that that's great. I love that this is able to hold water again, so that it will be watered while I'm away. I'll basically probably fill it to like 1/8 of an inch just above the base of this pot, so it'll be a little soggy initially and then dry out over the course of, I think it's two weeks this next round. So leaving a bunch of seedlings by themselves to their own devices for 2 weeks is a little bit scary, but I'm testing this because I want to make gardening as easy and like foolproof as possible for everyone involved, so that as we move forward, we're able to just do it. You know, like if you travel a lot, if you have a very busy schedule, then having the ability to like grow something and put it in your window and, you know, not forget about it, but definitely not have to like fuss with it, then I think that that removes enough barrier to entry that maybe some more people will feel encouraged to give it a go. So that's the goal with all of this. The other thing I love about the terracotta is that you can see when it's wet versus when it's dry. And so, not that it'll ever get to this point with the plant in it, hopefully, because then you're going to have a really dried out, sad plant. But I like, you know, you can see like when the edge starts to dry out a little, not on this guy because he got water this morning, but that basically have a better sort of way to keep track of, you know, where your plant's at and if it needs water. It's a good way to learn. One of the things about watering that always strikes me as kind of intuitive, but is something good to keep in mind, is sometimes it's a lot easier with seedlings to tell if it needs water based on the weight, like how heavy it is when you pick it up. And so when I'm doing these individual containers, I mean, obviously it's a bad example because it's empty, but you can kind of, you know, weigh them against each other and weigh a watered one against ones you haven't watered yet, just kind of in your hands like this, and determine, you know, like if it's lighter, and if it's really light, then it probably needs water. If it's a little bit lighter, it might need water. But rather than smushing your finger into every single pot to get a feel for, you know, the amount of moisture in the soil, you can, you know, do it in one, decide if it has enough moisture, and then just start to get a feel for weight. I don't even put my fingers in them anymore, to be honest, because I just do it based on like, if this feels heavy enough to where I know that it's saturated enough, then it just goes in there. And it's a process that, you know, evolves like as you go. You learn, you know, it's a muscle memory thing. So that's I think as well as I can explain that, at least, you know, via video without actually handing you a pot and being like, hey, feel this one. This one's a little bit heavier. That's good. Like, so moving on from that, let's see the other exciting stuff I got. Oh, one other thing I find at the dollar store, I'll weed these out of here, is seeds. So if you, I think the only thing that that one didn't have, because they had pots and they had things you could use as trays and seeds. I think they only didn't have soil. So, but I wouldn't buy soil at the dollar store anyway, because yeah, that's your most important ingredient. So like maybe don't scrimp there. But yeah, so I get seeds. It's 4 packs for $1. They're generally pretty viable. I haven't had any issues with them. I bought a lot of alyssum this time because it's one of those plants that I just like to have extras of. I won't be starting these until I get back because they're 7 to 12 days to germination. So they will already be sprouted and getting a little bit spindly if I do that. And part of my seed starting planning here is knowing how long I'm going to be gone and knowing how long a seed takes to germinate under ideal conditions, and then only planting the ones that take as long as I'll be gone or shorter. Because if they take as long as I'll be gone or longer, because if they take a shorter amount of time, again, they're going to sprout up on a ledge here that I have, and it's just going to end up like really spindly little plants. So what else do we have going on? So I got a sprouter. That was exciting. This is a week now, I think. Let's see, I started him last Sunday. It's Saturday, so this has been a week. And it's kind of a little fun exercise in growing food. If you don't have space, you don't need, grow lights or anything, whoops, for sprouting. And they're very quick. I think these guys are pretty much done. I'm just gonna give them one more rinse, but you can see. So the first one was sunflowers. I'm getting water everywhere, always. Sunflowers, and then this is just like a sprout mix. I think it has alfalfa, clover, some mustard or something. And then, whoops, this is micro basil. Takes a little bit longer, but I wanted to test it out. It's a siphoning sprouter. I can do a little video insert of how that works right here. Basically just, you fill up the top water container and you put your finger over the hole and then you put it on top and put the lid on, and then just runs down into the bottom. I've been using the water that comes out of the base of this to water my seedlings because, well, in my head at least, there's enzymes that are being washed off of the sprouts as they're sprouting. And I figure, one, like, don't waste water, but two, it doesn't hurt to, if there are like nutrients and enzymes or whatever, like some level of proteins, I don't know, but something being washed off of those sprouts, kind of along the lines of like a sprouted seed tea, but not as, not steeped as long, I guess. Not really sure how to explain it, but anyway, I'm using that wastewater to water my seedlings. Haven't seen any adverse effects. I couldn't tell you if there are beneficial effects because I kind of am doing it indiscriminately and there's no control. So, but just a thought to kind of throw out there. Let me know in the comments below if you have rationale, like any method to that madness, or if I'm just kind of imagining things and there's placebo effect going on here. Either way, it's all good. Other things that I got. So this was also from the dollar store. I got a couple of these little tins. I always need stuff to organize the seeds I'm working with, just like all over the house. So it's good to have a tin that I can like shove in the closet or in a cabinet. The other ones have construction supplies in them right now. I might eventually plant in one. It doesn't have holes, so we'll see if I can like build enough of a platform so that there's like a water reservoir or something. I might, sub-irrigate one of these and do greens or something. I don't know. We'll get crazy. We'll see. But anyway, that was $1. All of these seeds that I got recently. So that's another thing is we're getting close to like all of the door closeout. Everything must go if it hasn't already passed in your neighborhood garden center. But I went up to one when I was in, or I guess went down to one when I was in Santa Barbara. There was a nursery there that was they had a huge cardboard box next to the register, and it was buy one, get 4 packs free, which is insane. So of course I had to buy seeds. That's how I ended up with all of these sprouting seeds, which was funny because I bought all of these sprouting seeds before I bought the sprouter, and I just figured I'd do them in a mason jar, and then I stumbled across this guy at Goodwill for like $2. So I was like, well, I might as well sprout them properly than just, not that a mason jar is not proper, it's just this is a little bit, I think this is a little bit easier, for me at least, and then I can have a little more variety. But I also got, it wasn't like just sprouting seeds that were on sale. I also got like a bunch of, there's like some squash that I love. There's some eggplants that I always forget to start from seed until it's too late, and then I have to get seedlings. A bunch of favorite herbs. lots of those guys. I've actually been buying a lot of fresh chamomile lately and drying it for seed starting tea, because chamomile is a really gentle antifungal, I want to say. It's either antifungal or antimicrobial, but I'm pretty sure it's antifungal. And so if you have seeds that have been stored poorly, or just like, you know, in not ideal conditions, or been exposed to any sort of mold, or if they're usually at risk of damping off early, then it might help you to make a really weak chamomile tea, not from the seeds, but from the flowers, like these guys hanging behind me that I got at the farmer's market. And so make a really weak chamomile tea and then soak your seeds in that, and then go on with like the whole germination process, however you decide to go about doing that. And yeah, that sometimes helps with like the fungal stuff that you deal with. So good thing to keep in mind. What else do we have going on? Let's see. Oh, one of the other things with all of these seeds, and now I've probably messed up my stack. No, here we go. So there's a couple that I'll start when, like just before, like the day before I leave, I'll start a couple of seeds. But I'm not going to start anything that on the back of the packet says on the days to emerge, anything that says less than 10 days, I am not starting, because I'm going to be gone more than 10 days. Now, ideally, they'll say like 10 to 15, or they'll say like 10 to 20. Ideally, they take on the far end of that for this trip. Usually, I won't plant seeds unless I'm only going to be gone for a week or less. But I want to test them out for this 2-week disappearance. So I'm going to do just a couple, and then if they get too spindly and fall apart on me, like some of my tomatoes did this last round, then I'll replant them when I'm here on like a shorter date. But again, playing with what are easier ways to break down this process so that it's more manageable, so that you can do it at home with more success, even if you have a really busy schedule. There's so many people who tell me like, oh, I'd love to garden, but I just don't have time. And like, I'm trying to kind of knock that one out as an excuse. Time and money are the big factors. And so if you're able to find supplies that look good or that are really functional on a budget, then that knocks out the money one. If you're able to find seeds on a budget, that knocks out the money one. And then the time one, we're trying to address by me planting stuff and then walking away for a week or two, and then coming back and seeing what's still alive and figuring out, you know, what's the next move there. A couple more things and then we'll close this out so it doesn't go way too long. So this guy right here is a funny little experiment that I'm doing, and I'm not sure how it's going to work out yet, but it looks a lot happier than when I transplanted it yesterday, so we'll see. There's a growing method that's called Krakty, and it's basically a sort of low, not low impact, but it's like I can never find the words when I want them, right? But it's basically like a very simple hydroponics. And all the hydroponics people in the comments are just gonna like lose their minds, I know, because there's no pump and there's no newts and all of that sort of stuff. But basically what you do is you get a plant all set up, typically in a net pot is the way that I've seen it done online. But I'm doing it in a terracotta pot because it matches my picture and it matches everything else I'm doing. I would have liked to find an orchid pot for this, just to give the roots a little more air exposure and surface area exposure to water at the base of this, because so the theory method with Krakty is that you basically put a pot in a vessel that can hold water and nutrients. This has some seaweed solution in it, and then I also have, you know, the various nutrients and whatnot in the soil blend. I'm not doing coco coir or whatever, like hydroponic, you know, like the pebbles or what is it, the fiberglass, the rock wool, like none of that stuff. So I'm doing a soil blend that it does have a little core, let's be honest, because it has some of the seed starting mix too. So it has a little bit of like the water retention stuff that you'd need in there to keep it together and give the roots, you know, some place to grow. And then the theory is that as this grows, the water level in the container will begin to go down and the roots will come out the bottom of the pot and then you know, continue to access nutrients, and then the plant will keep growing up. Now, there's a couple of things, again, that might be an issue with this setup. One, that there's not a whole lot of available surface area for like the hole on this. It's all wet. I'll show you. So it has just like the normal, it's a 4-inch or 4, yeah, I want to say it's a 4-inch pot, 4.5-inch pot. It has the normal one hole in the middle of the bottom. And so that's not going to be ideal for like all of these roots to come out and find source of nutrients. So we might just get one big clump of roots like squeezing each other, which would be fine. But I think that an orchid pot might be more ideal just to give the roots a little more access. Another concern that I have is that this vase, because it's terracotta, the base of it tends to sweat water a little, so I'm going to have to find something to put under it so it doesn't totally stain the counter there. But it'll be an interesting experiment to try out. I separated out all of these cucumbers, and then this guy got pulled apart yesterday and he lost a main root and was really sad, but once I got him set up in here, bounced back pretty quickly, so thanks seaweed, I guess. But yeah, I think that if it works, like it'll be cool because it's kind of a big plant to grow in a very tiny container, but I know that cucumbers do all right in hydroponic setup, so you know, hopefully it does well. Hopefully this doesn't end up stinking. Maybe I'll find an orchid pot, or I might just leave it in here and see how it goes. One other thing from the dollar store before I close this out, I've clearly, well, I mean, that's kind of, you know, what I can swing right now. So for those budget people out there, like, I got your back. This guy. So these, and maybe I'll pull the top one off so you can see it. Hopefully it doesn't leak water everywhere. But why wouldn't it? Because everything else does. So it's these weird little sort of like three spoke shaped planters. And then they stack. And so they're $1 a piece. I think that's great. If you have like a really small space and you know, want to grow a variety of things, then this is a good place to start. They all have trays underneath so that they catch most of the water, although it did leak when I moved it inside to show you. This guy's sitting on the patio right now during the day. I'm hardening off these plants because they started to get a little bit too big for their britches in their tiny pots. So, you know, moving those around. I have some really sad tomatoes at the base. I don't even think you can see them. But yeah, they did not fare well with the no watering experiment last week. Not as well as everyone else did, at least. But it was good to know that most things could stay alive for about a week indoors here without water, with, you know, no heating or AC or anything on, and with all the windows shut. Because that made it feasible to go about 2 weeks and leave them some water and see what happens. So anyway, stacking planter, $1 a piece for each of these modules. I don't know how long it'll last. I don't think the plastic is really that heavy duty, but to be honest, like if it's, you know, space and containers that are standing between you and growing your own food, then let's start here. You know, like I think that it's good to at least get going, and then, you know, hopefully it's something that can be taken care of and will last. I think that you could probably dump all of your soil into a compost pile or a worm bin or something to recondition it over the winter and stack these guys, you know, in storage somewhere and maybe get a few seasons out of them. So fingers crossed it'll work out that way. I think that's pretty much it for today. If you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. As always, if you like what you see, hit that subscribe button, ding that bell. Don't miss a single week. I know that these are sort of, you know, kind of all over the place, but I wanted to at least start covering, you know, the bases that I go through and things I think about as I'm ramping up for the spring garden. And if you need even more info, follow me on Instagram at FlavorKit, because there's always cooking and gardening stuff there. I'll probably start doing a little bit more cooking here in the next couple of weeks. But definitely lots of gardening and lots of cool food adventures in general. So Instagram at FlavorKit, and until next time, happy gardening.